Welcome to another episode of Rose Resource Room, where we unpack real stories, struggles, and successes of homeschooling and hardschooling, one honest conversation at a time. I'm your host, Ro, and today we're recapping my homeschool journey, and I want us to reflect on the lessons, the learning, and the laughter. If you've ever doubted yourself, second guessed your curriculum, or wondered, is this whole thing even working? You're in the right place, and this one is for you. This episode is intended to be vulnerable and also victorious as we look back at what worked well, right? So we're going to explore what didn't go so well, what should I have done differently, what should I start, stop, and continue as we look forward to our upcoming school year. So one of the things I realized is that there's a myth that I actually believed. Now, I've heard so many people talk about, oh, you're going to be homeschooling, you're going to teach the kids math. That's going to be so hard. And for me, I love math. I think math is so much fun. I find it to be like a puzzle that you have to decode. So it's really interesting for me. I actually like the challenge. And I remember someone saying that to me, and I was like, no, I actually enjoy math, so I think it's going to be okay. What I didn't realize is that even though I didn't believe what the person said, that seed still took root. So what happened is initially I was starting to teach the math and everything was going okay, but because that seed was planted, I started thinking, okay, maybe I need to outsource this. Maybe I need to do video-based curriculums. Maybe I need to have someone else teach the kids. And then I was thinking, Ro, you love math and you're patient enough in math to explain it in 200 different ways until they get it. So where is this coming from? And I was speaking to one of my amazing mentors in this homeschooling journey, and she was just saying that, math is something that people have anxiety over, and it may not even be because of their actual journey. It may just be something that they take on. And I started thinking about it, and it's like, that is so true because here I am internalizing this thing that's not even my own story. Why am I taking on someone else's story and making it my own? Math is something I adore, but I noticed that I started to get frustrated with it and even to the point of outsourcing it um, because of all those seeds that were planted. Another seed that was planted was one that I actually did not believe at all. I talk to people and they're like, oh, so you're going to homeschool your kids? Aren't you concerned about socialization? And I would say, yeah, that's why I pulled them out. I am concerned about their socialization, and that's exactly why I'm homeschooling them. And I just lifted a load. I just kind of shrugged my shoulders because I knew that this interage pair schooling, my kids weren't missing anything, right? I knew that my children going to different places with me, speaking to people from different generations, speaking to their own generation, I knew that they were okay. But somehow in the back of my mind, another seed must have been planted because I recognized that I was enrolling them in all these different things. Now, granted, those things were curriculum or things that I wanted them to learn, whether it was like an instrument or a sport or a language or something like that. But at one point, we were actually over socialized. We did not need more meetups, we needed more margin. And thankfully, I got to the point where I recognized that. And I just started talking to the kids like, okay, do we still need to do guitar? Do we still need to do piano? Do we still need to do soccer? Do we still need to do all these things? And then we got to a place where our schedule was more manageable. And then we could actually get the things done that we needed to because we weren't always gone, right? Like it wasn't just car schooling all the time. We were actually home. Interesting. So another thing I was reflecting on is the fact that even though I am such a planner and productivity is my jam, and I'm so organized, I was completely winging some things. Now, when I say winging, like there's a concept of open and go. Like there's some books where literally you open and go and you teach the lesson and everything is either scripted or it's bulleted so nicely that you could literally open and go. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about days when I have, things that are going on and I hear my kids asking, so what are we doing today? And in my head, I'm like, what do you mean? What are we doing today? Like I've planned out the whole month or I planned out the quarter. Like I know what we're doing, but I wasn't communicating that. So even though I was planning, I wasn't meticulous in sharing what was happening. So they knew their core things, they knew what they had to do by the end of the day. But they weren't clear on what was happening when. So what I realized is that if I'm holding everything together in my brain or on the piece of paper or in the journal that I possess that they don't have access to, then everything falls apart when I need to take a phone call or I need to respond to an email or a situation, right? And I also have a 2-year-old that needs attention too. So what I found was I needed to be more organized as it related to either writing in their planner or writing on the whiteboard or giving them the to-do list that tells them what they had to do. I needed to also create a structure where even if I didn't say what to do, they knew what was coming because we were a little bit more fluid in terms of, today we may have Latin and math and 3 other things, where tomorrow we have 2 of the core things, but then we switch something in and then we have our specials and then we may only do history once or twice. So it wasn't like every single day they knew A, B, C, D. It was like, okay, where are we starting? And I realized how that created more, that made me a bottleneck, right? Like if I wasn't in a position to begin, they were kind of like, okay, what are we doing? So to be fair, I did have a plan, but it wasn't always shared or written clearly or visible. So that's another thing that I recognized. One major thing that I noticed was I focus a lot on curriculum over consistency. Now, curriculum is important. You'll hear people say, if it doesn't work, ditch it. You'll hear people say, stick it out because maybe there is no perfect curriculum, right? And both schools of thought are true. The thing is that I learned that even if you found the perfect curriculum, that won't save a disorganized day. So if I didn't have that consistent rhythm, which was more powerful than the perfect resource, and I was still going to be where I was, which is what am I doing today, mom? Right? So definitely check out curriculum. Make sure that you're finding something that works for you and that works for your family, but also make sure that you have that consistency and that flow. And the reason I'm saying different words like flow and rhythm and structure is because some people thrive on we do the same thing every day in the same order from 8 a.m. to 8:15 and then 8. I don't necessarily like to work in those kind of time blocks. I need a flow. I need to know that I'm going to get all my things done by the end of the day, but I don't like monotony. I don't necessarily like routine, but I understand how children at this age thrive on that structure and thrive on routine. So we need to find what that balance is. I mean, to digress a little bit, I'm the same way with food. I am not eating oatmeal for breakfast every day. I need to have oatmeal one day. I need variety. We're going to have eggs another day, and we're mixing it up like 4 or 5 different things for the week. I can't have the same thing every day. That just goes against my personality, right? So I need variety. And what I realized is that that need for variety was showing up in my day with the children, but it was actually becoming a bottleneck, like I said. All right, so as we're talking about curriculum, another thing that I recognized was sometimes we're trying to push through to get to the end or to finish a course or to finish a week that we forget that this is not just homeschooling, it's heartschooling. And what that means is sometimes you have to ditch curriculum to make sure that you're talking about character. So, when hearts are heavy, little learning sticks. So if something is going on, I'm just like, oh, it's okay. You guys just get over it and keep going. Character building often is the real lesson for the day. So if I'm trying to push through or to push past something and not focusing on what's happening in the heart, then I'm actually doing a disservice to all of us and just wasting time. So yes, curriculum matters. Yes, the academic piece matters, but you have to work on the character. The character, especially for me, because I was sharing how my own flaws show up, whether, I just kind of like expose my inconsistencies. And that's not failure, it's just an invitation to grow alongside my children. How that would show up is, we would start working on something and I'm like, all right, I'm so excited about this. We're doing this. And then 2 weeks later, I'm like, oh, I forgot we're doing that. Right. So that inconsistency, you're looking for a certain result. But if you're not putting in the time and the sweat equity, then you can't expect that result. So just making sure that I was being consistent, I was creating a clear structure and flow for the children was really important. Another thing I recognize is all my friends who use different curriculums started to say, so what's your end date? And I'm like, The reason I didn't have a real end date is because I know that I kind of go all throughout the year. So we're always reading, we're always doing math, we're always doing like some of our core things. But there are some things that I actually do drop in the summer or do drop during the winter, but I never had an end date. And that made it a little bit harder. So, like, where someone would say to me, oh, I have to do 180 lessons. So my end date is April 30th, or my April end date is June 1st. But, I'm running behind on this. I'm like, we end when we end, but it's not, while it's flexible and it's fluid, you want to make sure that you're not burning out. And without a defined end, sometimes you risk just kind of like dragging through lessons instead of like celebrating milestones, or sometimes you risk not having that kind of like fire to say, okay, let's get through this because we have a goal, whether the goal is vacation or a break or just to celebrate a milestone. But I recognized that that was something that was really, really important for me that I'm going to look at going forward. And as I was thinking about that, I started thinking about the time fallacy. So whenever I had a busy day, those were my most productive days because I know I didn't have any time to lose, I didn't have time to waste. So I scheduled things really tightly, like, okay, right after I do this, then we're going to work on this. While I'm doing this, you're going to work on this. And then there was that flow because I knew I didn't have the flexible time that day. But then on the other days where I had more leisure, I'm like, wait, we didn't accomplish as much as we did when I was busier. So that's just kind of that time fallacy where it's like you feel like more time didn't necessarily mean more productivity because you didn't rethink how to use your hours. You're like, oh, I have time, I'll get to it, get to it. Um, One thing that I did a lot was assessments. And that's not something that it's mandatory for me to do, but I like to see progress. I like to see growth, but I also understand how overassessing kills joy. And I was definitely guilty of kind of like digging up the garden to see if it took root. So what that would look like is I would teach a lesson and everyone would be excited about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. And then a couple days later, I'm like, okay, let's do an assessment. And the reason for that is I wanted to make sure that before I moved on to something, they grasp the concept. But that doesn't always have to be paper and pen. Doesn't always have to be an assessment. So I think in short, I'm trying to say that I'm learning to trust the process and let learning unfold, understanding that it may not always be tangible. Um, and it may not be that they're regurgitating something, but they may have ignited something somewhere else. And I remember talking to one of my mentors, Gretchen Rowe from the Demi Learning Company, Matthew C. And she was just reminding me that, your goal is not to fill a cup, it's to ignite fire, it's to fuel fire. So my goal is not just to pour, like open their brains and pour knowledge in. It was to spark learning, it's to spark connection, it's to spark curiosity. So I just really appreciated her for sharing that with me. One thing I'm really, really proud of though is how much we read together. We read a ton of books together, and I can't even remember everything we read, but some of the ones that stood out for me were The Hobbit, which is like this epic journey that taught us about like courage and cleverness, um, and really power and perseverance and like unlikely heroes, not like the ones you would think, but just recognizing that each person is their own hero. And that was really good because it's not necessarily my favorite kind of genre, but I also allowed them to watch the movie after, which they really, really enjoyed. We did do a few classics. We did Alice in Wonderland, we did Peter Pan, and I was a little bit surprised by Peter Pan because maybe I didn't remember the storyline, but I was like, wait, what's happening? Because in my head, Peter Pan was just this boy who didn't want to grow up and he lived in Neverland. And then I was driving and the boys were reading. I'm like, wait, what? Captain Hook? What? Who? Wendy Bird? Who killed? What is happening? So it was kind of fun to go back to that story and just recall all the adventure, which they absolutely enjoyed. We did Hansel and Gretel, which was really good because we saw a play. It was like puppetry. So we were able to go to a theater and see like the marionette puppetry, which was really nice for the Hansel and Gretel show. We read Charlotte's Web together and then we watched the movie. In April, we celebrated Shakespeare's birthday, and then that just ignited something in them, and they wanted to read everything. I'm like, I don't know that you're ready for everything, but since we are talking about Julius Caesar and history, I'll read this one. So we read that together, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so vicious. But it was good. They could handle it. I don't know that I suggest that for younger kids, but they were able to handle it, and I just kind of skipped over stuff. But I also had Shakespeare for children, so it was definitely a watered down version. So that was good just to kind of like bring ancient history alive through the dramatic storytelling and timeless themes. Um, I personally read Free Range Kids, and I did partially audio, so the kids heard some of it. And some of it, like Lenore Skenazy, is such a brilliant mind. The way she was able to use humor to talk about, trusting her children's capabilities and, allowing them independence and the courage rather than just like fearing and being this paranoid person who thinks, like at any moment their child is going to get snatched up. That was really good. And the kids, they did their independent reading. I think my oldest one reread like the entire Chronicles of Narnia series. My younger one got into some really great books based on his interests. So I was really proud of that. And like I said, I did a lot of books that were movies. So that was like another bonding and almost like an incentive for them too. What else went well? As I reflect on what I did well, I would say I garnered support, and that came in a couple different ways. So I attended the Midwinter Conference at CHAP, the Christian Homeschool Association of Pennsylvania, and it was so refreshing, so encouraging. My husband was home with the kids, so I was able to go alone, and I really got what I needed in terms of that extra boost that you need, just like as you're a couple months in. And then recently I went to Machi's conference. So they had a parenting conference in Maryland, and then we went out to DC and, just saw the sites. So again, history coming to life. That was really great. That really gave me the encouragement to just keep going and get a fresh vision. One thing I'm really proud of is that I took breaks. That made us all better learners and better humans. And we had fun. Like we had a lot of mini vacations. We had fun field trips that were practical and educational, made real world learning just very rich and memorable. Um, I made time for my friends and my family and had adult conversations and just got support from adults, whether they're on this homeschooling journey, already went through it and never, decided to, but just like spending time with other amazing humans. That was great. And my husband and I were able to do a short trip to Mexico, which was really great because I came back very rejuvenated and just refreshed and like ready to jump in. So I will say that I definitely slowed down to speed up. So definitely just doing a recap, seeing what's working, evaluating, getting more clarity. Um, and then I embrace the truth, which is a hard truth that I just share that learning is not always linear, right? Like my goal definitely started to shift from that filling a cup to igniting a fire. So I would say that moving forward, I'll continue to write down my daily plan more consistently and make sure that the children have access to it. But I'll not only do the daily plan, but I'll have the whole month, which I usually do in goals, but then I usually break it down into weeks and days. But now I'll make sure that they have access to it and they have their own copy so they can hit the ground running, knowing everything that they need. I'm definitely going to be more intentional about our start dates and our end dates so that we can celebrate the journey and just kind of break down what we need to accomplish. And most of all, I think I'll remind myself that progress is happening, even when it's quiet or even when it's slow. So, in summary, I'll just say that homeschooling, it's not about like checking off curriculum or just like moving to the next grade. It's really about building character, building connection and curiosity, right? Like that igniting the fire. So I hope you're proud of your children, not just for what they learned, but for who they are and for who they're becoming. So whether you do loop school or you take a long break or you engage all year round, I hope you enjoy your time with your children. I hope you take a break and also that you create actionable and realistic goals. And if you're going to be at convention this year, please just stop by and say hi. So my point in sharing all this is to just have a reflection, and hopefully you saw yourself in some of this, you saw some of the flaws I made and then you don't make those, or you saw some of the wins and then you'll implement some of those learnings too. So I really hope that this has been helpful for you. If there are any topics that you want us to cover, feel free to drop them in the comments, or reach out to us. So thank you and have an amazing time.